Now obviously it's no surprise it is pretty cool out. It's actually been misting for most of the day. It's pretty chilly and cold. But I'm going to go ahead and give you an update on the budget S10 build. Now, as I mentioned before, that I had a truck and no one really wanted it, but I kept the motor and transmission, everything to run it, and got all my money back from parting it out. Now, the engine and transmission is in the truck now. It's not the prettiest sitting there. There's a few things that I have to do to it, but it's in there. Still got to do the wiring, and that kind of gives you a head up that it's probably fuel injection with it. It is. Now, this is not your typical engine swap on an S10. You see a lot of LS swaps and a lot of old school carbureted swaps. This one's kind of in between. I went with a TBI motor of a 94 heavy half truck. So it's not the hottest engine out there. It's not the fastest engine, but it's not a bad engine. There's a few little tweaks we can do to it to make it just a little bit better. But in this lightweight truck with a 4L60E, it should be really fun on the streets, especially with the low gear ratio that's in that rear end. So even though it's not the fastest, it's not really hopped up, it's still going to be fun, it's still going to be reliable, and I like to be pretty economical too. Now I can say from past experience that these throttle body engines are actually not bad. A lot of people put them down. I remember having one in the family that for roughly 5-6 years, when it came into the family, it probably had 100-something thousand miles on it already. It was in a 4x4 long bed truck, and it was actually a 305 throttle body, but it was able to move that 4x4 like nothing. A heavy 4x4 truck. So this 350 throttle body with 4L60E ought to move that little S10 pretty quick. But as I was saying, I can't tell you how many honest miles was putting on that throttle body engine, other than maybe a sensor going out here and there. It was really reliable. Get out, start it, go. So in my mind, it was not a bad choice to throw that motor in this S10. Now originally what I had planned for the engine was to find something from the 40s or 50s and throw it in that and try to make a daily driver out of it. Maybe a wagon, a truck, four-door car, something like that. Never came up within the budget I wanted to do it in. So here it is in the S10. Now I kept the wiring, as I stated earlier. I also kept all the air conditioning components to go with it to put in something older. Unfortunately, those don't really fit in this S10 too well, so those are going to go out the window, and it's going to be a heater only truck. But that's not a deal breaker. But for the most part, the engine transmission is in it. Now one thing I have to do with the cross member that came with this truck is to actually notch it a little bit to fit the 4L60 a little bit better. And the drive shaft itself will have to be cut down about 1.5 inches. Now, the previous owner had told me a few things about this truck, and he told me he had when he got the truck, they had a hopped up 305 in it and a 350 turbo. He doesn't remember if it was long tail or short tail because it's been a while. This truck had sat at his place without the engine and transmission in it for a while. So he didn't remember which transmission he had in it. Unfortunately, it's probably just a short tail because we're gonna have to chop down the drive shaft a little bit to make this 4L60 fit the 4L60. Now another thing he did mention, which when you're buying a used car or truck, you don't really fully believe everything everyone tells you anyway. Now what he had told me was the truck had no power steering, and it does not have a power steering gearbox. So there is no place for power steering lines in the gearbox. But as he said, that even with the V8, it actually turned extremely fast and quick. So it seems like it's probably a quick ratio gearbox. And looking at it in the daylight after I got it back home the next day, because it was dark when I brought it home, that's what it looks like it to be. With the front end up, turning the steering wheel, it looks like a quick ratio gearbox, so that's a plus. On the downside with the throttle body engine is the serpentine setup, and it has the power steering pump pulley in the serpentine route. Now, removing the power steering from that is going to be a little tricky, finding a bypass pulley, because I don't know if they actually make one or not. I haven't looked into that. But now, since we're not running air conditioning on this, I do have the AC bypass pulley on it already. And as I was stating earlier about a budget build, is selling parts that you no longer need, so you can put that money elsewhere into the project. All the AC components will be gotten rid of, so I can afford other parts of this project. But it's enough of me talking, so I'll show you the engine a little bit. It's still a little dirty, needs to be cleaned up, but I'll let you get a glimpse of it before it's done, just to show you what it looks like now. Now, it's in there, it fits pretty well, and it doesn't look too bad in there. Now, most of that stuff was on there when it was in the other truck, except for the valve covers and the air conditioning bypass pulley. Now, the valve covers I actually bought as soon as I pulled the engine, because as I stated earlier, I thought about putting it in something from the 40s, 50s, and even maybe in the 60s, and I thought those valve covers actually fit the genre very well. But I didn't put that, obviously, in something older. I put it in this. I'd already gotten rid of the stock valve covers, and well, might as well put them on there, and it does look good. Now, it does have a mini starter, which is great, especially with the headers and exhaust that we're going to put on it. And the red spark plug wires I put on recently. They're Summit Racing spark plug wires. It didn't cost a whole lot. They're probably just as good as the Taylor's, but they're on there. And I went red because, well, obviously the interior is red, and trying to do a budget build, I don't want to put a lot of money into changing the color of the interior, so I'm going to leave it alone. So I went with red spark plug wires, which is cheaper than changing the carpet. Now, obviously it has that nasty ugly air cleaner on it still. That will be changed. If you didn't notice, it is a dual studded air cleaner. There's no provision to put a single stud in it, so you're kind of limited on choices in the aftermarket on air cleaner lids, and actually air cleaners in general for that throttle body setup. And I'm going to fashion up something to make it look a lot better. But the other thing is obviously the hood. What I'm going to try to do is, when I fashion up the air cleaner, which I'll show y'all later, I will actually bring it up, raise those studs up. I'll probably have to get stud extensions, and I'm bringing them. My thought is to put a piece of aluminum in there, cut a hole out for the air cleaner where the air cleaner can rise up into the cowl induction, making it functional. That is actually what I'm thinking about doing now. And also, just in case you got to work on anything around the throttle body or get to the hoses or anything, you can get to it because the air cleaner will be up higher. And also, that air cleaner looks horrible under there. And if that's not a dead giveaway of what spark plug wires were on there before, it had blue ones on it because the truck this came out of was white and blue. So it was painted blue to match. And I don't have a reason to run it on this truck, so it's going to go bye-bye. Now, the other issues I'm looking at is, I'm not sure if it'll be an issue yet, but the backside of the distributor has plugs for the wiring harness, and they're kind of close to the firewall. I'm hoping I can plug it into the distributor without the firewall creating interference anywhere. If it does, we'll just have to massage that firewall back a little bit. Other than that, the throttle body cable that was with this truck is a stainless steel braided one. I'm either going to have to move the bracket or put a different cable on it because it's not reaching where it should very well on the throttle body with the factory throttle body bracket on there. So I'm going to have to figure out something on that as well. And like I was saying, the power steering pump, I'll have to figure out something there as well. But that may not be an issue. I'm thinking I may actually be able to use one of the pulleys from that side that will no longer be used because of the air conditioning bypass pulley, and move it down there and just kind of reroute the belt. But once I get closer to getting this thing where it's ready to run, I'll look at that a little bit more. Now, I still have to get a radiator for it, which it looks like it's going to be a really close, tight fit on this one. At least it looks that way. I don't have a radiator for it. I found a few radiators and I'm judging between a few, which unfortunately on this budget build, that is the high dollar brand new item I will have to buy. And I believe it's about $200, which is not bad. But we'll see how that goes when we get there. So there's going to be more detail work than just buying parts and throw it on. But there it is, engine installed. Got to cut the cross member a little bit, not a big deal. Cut down the drive shaft a little bit. Touching up here and there. Paint, install the inner fenders. Finish removing the wiring harness and installing a new one. But this is just a little update on where we're at now. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And as always, thanks for watching.